Hi. So one of the things that we've been tasked to do over the past few years, as you guys probably all know, is to try to figure out ways to activate different areas of our neighborhood that are underused, that present, you know, present health and safety issues or just livability issues in general. And so, um, Parks has asked us to come up with ideas on how could we activate the area from the railroad to Fifth Street at the Washington Jefferson Park that continues to have issues. And Todd contacted me out of the blue with kind of an amazing idea. So I'll let him talk about it.
Okay. So basically the idea would be to update the park and feasibly put a pump track there. It's a I don't know if anybody knows what a pump track is. It's for biking and cycling. Many cities out there have gone to and put and installed these pump tracks. It's a great way to get exercise. It's a great way to acclimate young children to biking and being mountain biking and getting acclimated so that they can get out on the river path and cycling paths. So our idea would be to possibly have 3 different sections installed at the park, one for beginners, one for standard intermediate riders, and then something for more advanced riders. Similar to what kind of the skate park has going on is sort of the idea that's floated. I guess it's already been an idea in the past and was floated by Emily Proudfoot to be actually at WJ as well. So we're just kind of continuing on with that idea, apparently, as we've discovered. And we've had really good reactions from many different cycling groups out there so far. We're just in the idea phases right now, and we're trying to see if this is something that can be possibly produced in the park.
Wow, that's an amazing idea. And I'm sorry, can you remind us what park you're shooting for there?
WJ.
Okay, and I figured, and that's great that Emily Proudfoot had already kind of suggested that or something. How long ago was that? Do you remember?
The word comes about a year, maybe a year and a half ago.
All right.
This is just to clarify. This is a bit secondhand information. Todd and I actually talked to a local bike club called the Dirt Disciples, and one of the guys that was at the meeting, who works with, he's not an employee, but he works side by side with the Parks Foundation. He had said that there was a conversation regarding where they could put a pump track in Eugene, and that WJ specifically had been pointed out as a very good candidate for that kind of thing. One thing that I wanted to add to what Todd said about pump track specific, it's a self-propelling track, and so there's a series of humps where you literally pump like you would on a swing set to propel yourself, and you keep momentum going. So it's a thing that you can do without pedaling once you gain momentum. And they're very popular nationally and internationally. And I'll say more when I give the update.
Okay, that sounds great. Guys, we have so much feedback going on. So if you're not speaking, will you mute? And looks like Stephen had a hand up.
I took my hand down because Travis answered the question with his description of what we were talking about.
Right. And I was going to ask the same, but yeah. Okay. So what portion of the park? I mean, this sounds like it's going to take up a huge amount of space. Where were folks thinking it would be ideal?
Well, we were thinking south of the railroad tracks, in between the Fifth and south of the railroad tracks, basically.
Mm-hmm. That's really wild.
It would be kind of the idea is that it would be a bicycle park, kind of like multiple stages for multiple levels of people, possibly some ADA acts like a track for folks that could even do it in wheelchair, and to kind of create like a park, and possibly bring in a professional aspect to it, so that it's kind of a like the skate park, an attractant to our neighborhood that that really generates use of positive use, and engagement with our park.
Yeah, that is great. Oh, Stephen says there's a pump track in Cresswell.
There was recently one built in Cresswell.
Oh, okay. Yep. Field trip for sure.
And Willamette Lane allegedly was looking into building one. These are going up everywhere. They're happening in. So Thea met with the director of public works today, and Rich, how do you pronounce his last name? Hoy. Yeah, Hoy. Rich Hoy. He's the director of public works, and he's only been the director of public works for about 6 months. He came from Olympia. He was the public works director in Olympia. And when she mentioned this idea that I had told her of Todd's, he said, a pump track, those are wonderful. He said, Olympia's got a really good one. And this is something that people travel to. I mean, people love pump tracks. I would encourage everybody that's interested at all in this to Google pump tracks under a bridge, or pump track. There's one that I seen in Perth, Australia, under a bridge. That's amazing. But to kind of familiarize yourselves with it, it's an all ages. It's an all ages exercise and fun. It's fun for all. So, and it's kind of a perfect location with bike shops everywhere, access to the bike path, access to downtown. It would be an amazing scenario down there.
The idea came. I travel to Bellingham every year. I have family up there, and they have, I think it's 2 or 3 there, but they have a bayfront there that's got a bridge right next to it, and they developed this unusable space and allowed people to build a pump track there, and it's become a highlight of their bayfront. And nothing but families, kids, people. They actually have a festival down there now that's all around mountain biking. And Bellingham is a smaller community than Eugene, and it sort of just dawned on me, why don't we have a pump track? And I said, well, it's in my neighborhood. I helped build the skate park, or do the legwork on the skate park. So I said, well, maybe we can get a pump track built here at WJ.
All right. Well, thank you, Todd. That is a really interesting and wild idea. I'm not sure really who to talk to first, but it sounds like
we're floating the idea to get a referral letter of support from the WCC. That's the reason I'm coming to speak.
I see. Okay. All right. So we'll take that back to the board and see what they think. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate your guys' time.
Yeah. Thank you, Todd. Pleasure to be in touch.
Yeah. Take care.
And we can reach you through Travis, right?
Yeah, that's fine. I can.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, Todd. And maybe I'll link Todd in with I'll give him the email info later so that maybe he can get linked into to you guys.
That sounds great. Okay.
Yeah, I'll be in touch. You guys will hear from me. So.
All right. Thank
All right.
you. All
Take
right.
care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Travis, will you go ahead and do the public or parks and open spaces update for Thea?
Oh, sure. I don't know exactly what Thea would say, but she said that I could do her job for her fairly well. So I'm just gonna tell you, I actually am pretty happy with the level of response that appears to be happening from the city on some of the livability issues. Most specifically, the garbage. It's still popping up all over our streets and all over at least WJ has been getting hit pretty hard, and even adjacent the dog park and adjacent the backyard farmer has been getting really hit hard with garbage piles, and people report, I report, and they seem to be getting picked up on a daily basis. So I am encouraged that they're getting picked up. It's still an issue, and I still hope that we can encourage the city to continue with their eyes on our neighborhood, picking up the garbage and supporting us in that effort. The garbage is getting old. I thought that it might just hang around for COVID and maybe a couple of years after, but here we are 5 years later, and these piles didn't used to exist all over our neighborhood. So let's keep up the good fight. And I believe deep in my heart that the good fight is keeping our neighborhood clean and free of really nasty messes all over our curbs and beauty strips and bike lanes and park spaces. So that being said, I do see a difference in response times. I'm happy to see that. I don't know if it's the new public works director and coordination. It appears that they're doing it promptly with reports. So kudos to whoever at the city is making sure that's happening, but it does appear to be happening. Side note, and please somebody raise their hand and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me like Scobert Park has been really doing a lot better than it was for quite a few years there. I haven't seen as many piles of trash left over, or you know, damage to the park, graffiti, all of these issues. I haven't seen as much of it over there, and I don't know if it's because I don't know why it is. I don't know if the market is taking a lead on communicating with the city, or if it's a mystery to me, because honestly for a while there it seemed like if messes were in the park, they didn't get dealt with until I or someone else was reporting it. So somebody's doing something right, and I think that Scobert's doing better. Does anybody have any feedback about that?
I can speak directly to that.
Would be the person as the owner. Yeah, go ahead, Jen.
Yeah.
Well, and then Janet, I'm sorry, I see you. We'll do you next.
One of the co-owners of the market that's transitioning to be a nonprofit, so I will be the treasurer on that. But I think what it was is that the parks guy who came by this summer and was like, "That's not my job," on something, and then watched our market manager get a loogie hocked in her face and assaulted, decided that maybe in fact it could be his job to pick up some stuff around the trash can, and in a pro-social way. We're all working together and trying to make it a little bit better. But I think, having it won't be there for long, but having Willie in Tidy's helped. And sorry, I have a terrible sinus infection, so I'm staying off camera for most of it. Nelson being there and open during the day has helped, but a lot of it is just, I think, some of the community relationships that we've built, and try to get the parks to, like you said, the city to pay a little bit more attention to the spaces.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I've noticed not just a decrease in garbage and in front of, across the street of, in and around that park, but also a decrease in some of the consistent like bad behaviors, like doing drugs in the park kind of things. Whatever's happening over there, keep it up. I don't know. You mentioned something about the barbecue place. Are they leaving? It seems like he was a good fit there. But it's encouraging to see at least Scobert grass being green without garbage all over it. It's great. So other than that, public health and safety, it's there's
A
been a
quick shout
couple.
out to the mission who helped clean it up too. Sorry.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, our Eugene Mission volunteers have been amazing. They have been twice over to the skate park area, cleaning up graffiti with helping the city on spots that are not sanctioned for art. They've gone, I mean, I kind of supervised that project for, it's been like 2 terms now, and they spot check many, many places. So yeah, bravo to the Eugene Mission team.
And then a couple of situations that have happened over the past couple weeks. There was a major camp on ODOT property all the way north of where North Washington kind of breaks into the or bumps into the Skinner's farm area where the safe sleep site is. And if you continue down to the river on your west side, ODOT property over the fence, there was a massive encampment that was really turning into kind of a hazardous scene, garbage and just hazardous material, hazardous waste. Um, it looks to me, I don't know who cleaned it up, but I would assume ODOT came and swept them out. And so we were having some pretty big impacts all over the North Whitaker side of the Whitaker for many, many, many days due to that sweep, because the folks had to find other places to be. It took some coordinated effort with Public Works and with other neighbors to try to keep them moving from in front of people's residences. And at this point, I don't know where they've gone, but at least they're not tearing apart bikes and doing like literally smoking fentanyl out in the open in front of our homes. So it's just another unfortunate thing. The sweeps happen, they get moved, they get pushed up a couple blocks. You don't want them in front of your home. They get pushed up in front of someone else's home, and then they just continue on and end up somewhere else. That's been an issue going on about 2 weeks in the North Whitaker, and WJ is still kind of having a drug problem. There's I've got a lot of documentation of people openly smoking fentanyl in our park. The Eugene police are aware of this. The parks obviously are aware of this. I don't know what else to do besides say, please voice your dismay. If you don't want drugs in the park, let it be known to parks, let it be known to the police. I don't, alleys are a better place to do drugs, I would say, in general, than the parks. I don't want people doing drugs in an alley that I live next to. So, obviously, from my point of view and from a lot of people's point of view, anywhere near your home isn't a good place to do drugs either. So what do we do? I don't know, but I'm just letting you know it's happening a lot down at Washington Jefferson Park. There's still a lot of drugs. Eugene Beauty Supply is being heavily impacted overnight. Sometimes 8 campers down there taking up their entire frontage and trashing it so that they get to work to a trashed frontage. And I've heard that she's actively trying to find a place outside of the Whitaker to move her beauty supply. So we're losing residents, businesses, residents to the ongoing negative behaviors. And I don't think it's because it's increased. I think that it's just that a lot of us are tired of it. I mean, how, you know, people are burning out on dealing with it. And so people are giving up. And I've talked to many, many neighbors that have either left or are going to leave and are giving up. So I'm encouraged by Todd's idea about some way to activate our park space so that we can have a place um, where people come to be healthy. And I think it would be great. I think it's an amazing idea. And Thea did recommend, and I think Todd might have said something about that, but recommended that we request for the Whitaker Community Council to write a letter of support for this idea of turning this into a bicycle playground.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Travis. Janet's had her hand up forever. Go ahead,
okay,
Janet.
sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, I'm not sure how to take the hand down.
That's okay.
Yeah, and I applaud Travis and his Todd on the what'd you call it, bump run. I would like to state that the city to ensure are these still covered, Travis? Covered areas that
I'm sorry?
the bump runs, the bikes, are they still undercover, so to speak, portions of it?
Okay, but it's called a pump track, like you pump your
Pump.
legs.
Yeah, pump path.
So
That
there's nothing set in stone, Janet. We're just this is
Okay.
just an idea that we're floating to WCC that Todd had brought up, and the idea would be to incorporate some of the covered space, and
Yes.
obviously it would probably go outside of the covered space too,
Yes.
with various kinds of tracks for bicycles.
And I'll say right up front, I wholeheartedly support that. It's positive exercise, it's maintaining health. The safety piece of it, I would implore that our letter include that the city put a strict no camping policy. I could just see tarps and blue tarps and people spread out, building fires, getting out. And if we go to the effort to put the pump park in, it absolutely must carry from the city a strict no camping, no loitering. It is for the activity and the use of park attendants. Because without it, I can just see more problems. And I'd also like to ask the Whitaker Council to put on the agenda or a vote, a letter that the city gets more serious with the trash and the outdoor camping and shift from buying tents and tarps to buying garbage services. I've talked to multiple businesses today, the rail yard being one of them, that they have had tons of trash dumped on their tracks. And it's even a county-wide problem up by the hot springs. I guess that's a common spot. And I don't represent the county, but for my neighborhood, this has been a too long problem going on. And I'd like to include in that letter that the breakfast people that have caused that grass to die out, that they use their liability insurance to restore that grass that has been beaten down with their activities.
Okay. Thank you, Janet.
Yeah.
We're way over time here. So Jen, one more thought and then we need to shift gears.
No, I just wanted to be respectful of time of the agenda and get us moving along because I think that there's also the stuff with the railroad. We have no idea what that construction is going to do.
Right.
And all of these things to our parks. The city's budget is swear worded.
Mhm.
And Cahoots is like facing layoffs and things. So let's try to stick with problems we can solve right now. Thank you.
Agreed. Thank you all for your input. Stephen, would you give us a quick recap of the HB 3170 conversation?
Sure, yeah. It's a bill that's in the House Oregon House right now. It's HB 3170. It reconfirms, continues a program that was established a couple of years ago, I think 2 years ago, right, Doriandra? And it provides the funding for disaster preparedness in neighborhoods. And the request in HB 3170 that the funding gets continued with another $10 million this year. And it was way oversubscribed last time. There were way more associations, neighborhood associations that applied for the funds. We got our chunk for Whitaker Community Council, and that funded a whole bunch of things that we've been doing. Doriandra wrote an excellent letter in support of the legislation, and as did many, many other organizations. It was like overwhelming support. There was only like 1 or 2 letters opposed in the testimonies submitted. And they had a hearing a couple of weeks ago and followed it up with a work session last week. And the vote was unanimous at the work session that the Climate, Energy and Environment Committee, House Committee that was hearing it, voted unanimously to pass it, move it on to the floor of the House with a do pass recommendation. And then it still needs to get its share of funds, which will be worked out by the Joint Ways and Means Committee when they start haggling over all the legislation that has money in it, figuring out how it's going to get paid for. So it did not have any significant opposition in the committee, even though there's the members of the committee across the political spectrum. So it's pretty much a motherhood and whatever, cherry pie. What is the expression? It's I mean, it was like not totally tied to climate response, even though it's the Climate, Energy and Environment Committee. It was very much a recognition that all sorts of disasters are possible in communities, and increasingly so. And where Doriandra's been leading the council on addressing various of the issues and getting training in place. Quite a few members of this committee are actively involved with disaster preparedness, and several of us have done some trainings. And one of the members of the committee is not here this evening, is actively involved in the radio communications that would be our communication system after all the cell phone towers go down and stuff like that. So it's going well, and I'm keeping an eye. I'm tracking it for a number of organizations, and I will let Doriandra know if we need to weigh in to provide additional testimony when it gets further on. It has to go through Ways and Means in the House, and then it has to go to the Senate. So it's a long way till it becomes before it gets sent to the governor's desk for signature. But it's starting very strongly, and we're watching it closely. So good news for funding, or continuation of funding for disaster preparedness. So good news. Thank you, Doriandra, for jumping on the testimony.
Yeah, thank you so much for keeping your eye to that. It's really exciting, and grateful that you're on the watch for that. Okay, I want to just jump into something that ties in with that. We've got, let's see, we got a lot of feedback here. Let's see. Stephen, will you mute yours? See if that stops it. Okay. Oh, that helped. Perfect. Okay. So yeah, one of the parts of that funding that Stephen was talking about was that huge resilience hubs, which, you know, as a committee all worked on that, and unfortunately we didn't get that grant. That was over 700 applicants and only 96 folks received those grants. So hopefully that will come through. But in the meantime, I found another grant coming through Philanthropy Northwest, and I just finished a pretty massive grant application for that, and basically took what we had asked for in that previous grant and refined it into a little bit smaller, but certainly doable. It's a $350,000 grant, and it would reduce the resiliency hubs that we had all kind of talked about and tried to plan for from 4 down to 2. But it still would be really helpful in emergency. It would serve over 500 residents, and we would again just kind of push for those areas that we were asking for, or I was asking the city for, but we're not, we're kind of getting an echo chamber. But most likely the Head Start parking lot would be really good. So we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but that is a really interesting grant because it's a little bit scary too with all of the administration changes and federal grant fundings. But it's fascinating how this organization, Philanthropy Northwest, has used this money from the Biden era for climate justice. And it must be a pass-through grant, but they have the 48 million in place. And so I wonder if that's why they were kind of amplifying the grant so that they could hurry up and get it out to people. So we'll know about that by May 1st, I believe. Go ahead, Jen.
But was that deadline this week, right? Or has it passed?
Yeah, it was March 7th.
Oh, okay, because I was gonna say COAG could write a letter of rec. But that's a great. I read that grant, and that's an awesome opportunity, and I think that will be a really strong application. So good job getting that in.
Thank you. Yeah, it was kind of a rush job. I'm not, somebody put it on, it came across somebody's desk and they passed it to me. So I did it in about a week and it was pretty hectic, but yeah, thank you. I'm excited about that. I think it would be kind of a slam dunk. So, and given, our strength as a committee and the public health and safety work that we've been doing for the Whitaker Community Council for so long now, we're really in a great place to receive those emergency planning funds. So yeah, let's all keep our fingers crossed and body parts crossed. So, all right, so let's hop in. We've got some big stuff ahead tonight. I know our biggest conversation tonight is really going to be about the train issue. So I'll make it quick with the healthy homes. It is ready to go. I have the subcontract vetted by our lawyer for our actual builders. So her and I are fine tuning that. We've got our contractors standing by, ready to work. The application is live. I'm going to get it into our social media probably tomorrow. I did a test run with our Blair Housing Co-op first. So they're toggling through it, and each unit there that has an eligible applicant based on their income will be sending me those so I can kind of test the thing and make sure there's no glitches. But we are ready to go. Every other document is ready. And so I'm presuming we'll launch that probably by the end of this week, and still no funds from the state of Oregon. But again, all fingers crossed that will be soon. And I figure we may as well start now. I can start getting the applications and input, and then we'll be ready to go when the money finally lands. So that's a bit of good news. Any questions or thoughts about that before we just hop on? Go ahead, Stephen. Oh, you're muted, dear. Oh, still muted.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, one of my neighbors down the road is an architect who recently remodeled his own home, his family's home. He's now buying properties in our part of the Whit, renovating them and then selling them. And he has offered his services. If you get a really gnarly case and the contractors you're working with need another pair of eyes or another brain to provide input on a particular situation, let me know. And he has offered that service pro bono, that he'll help out. So remind me if you need an extra architect input. Name of Andrew on our street.
Thank you. That's excellent. That's really appreciated. Great. all the thinking minds would, yeah, I'm sure we're going to hit those, as you call it, gnarly situations. So good to know. Thank you, Stephen. All right. Any other thoughts about our Healthy Homes Grant launch? And we'll be going into it tomorrow for our general meeting. I'll go through all the steps and let our public know what we're going to do and how we're starting. Go ahead, Travis.
Just a quick question. Some folks have probably already reached out to WCC about the grant. I don't know if there's been obviously no applications filed. Is that right?
Yeah, I haven't made it live. It's just going, so far it's only with the Blair Co-op folks. Because that would be multiple units.
So the folks that have already contacted you, are you going to be, or you, the big you, is WCC going to contact the folks that have already expressed interest, or do they need to know about it being launched and then recontact WCC?
I'm in touch with all of those people. It's me, and I have a nice list. There's only about 3 or 4, but they'll get the applications first because they've been basically waiting. So
oh, gotcha. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, yep, they're all in a queue. So yeah, this thing will, it's. I think we'll just take them as we come in order. But I wanted to give those folks that knew about it and were waiting like the first crack at it. So yes. Okay. Any other stuff? All right, let's launch into the Pacific Coast Intermodal Port Project. It's quite a mouthful. Wow. Okay, so we have great news. Janet just knocked it out of the park by getting in touch with the executive director of that group and got her to agree to come and talk to us as a community. So that is really exciting. Thank you, Janet. It's huge. I'm not sure how this is all going to work out because they had offered 2 dates that were like right now, basically. And it seemed that much more important to try to gather community awareness of this rare opportunity to hear from these people directly. So I tried to organize it for one of our general meetings, but we've been doing kind of a schedule conflict back and forth. So it looks like we will be connecting with them either in May or June, one of those general meetings. I know Margaret or maybe Janet were talking to them today. So we'll be ready for that. And I know, Stephen, that's good news for you because I know you're out of town in April. So this works out well because Stephen will have a lot of good points and questions for them. Stephen was on the initial kind of community input meeting with me with their representatives from JTA, which was a public kind of opinion third-party company that we met with. So yeah, I don't personally have many updates other than we know they're coming, and I believe that Thea may be trying to also get representatives from the Union Pacific, which would be excellent because we could have some clarity about their ideas too. Go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, I think since this is the first I've heard that it's been pushed out past the vote, which I am in support of. I think that kind of put a crunch on the election. And also, are you saying they're actually going to come in person?
This is what's been toggling back and forth. We would very much like them to come in person, but it's almost a 3-hour drive each way for them to come. So
I would implore the powers to be. I don't know if that's in this case, if that is Margaret or if that's council as a body with a letter, or if it's you as executive. I would implore you to pull in the quiet zone, at least the lady that is Katie Marwitz, who's the city person in charge of the quiet zone. I would implore you to pull her into this
Mhm.
And preferably all the citizen panel that is listed on their website. Also, I think that the quiet zone folks actually have a lot of our what are going to be our concerns about this project. They've already got it all documented. They've all the reasons we wanted a quiet zone in the first place, or I won't say all of them, but many of the reasons many of us wanted a quiet zone in the first place are captured in the quiet zone project, which has a vast group of folks that worked on that. So if they
Yes.
if they could be pulled in, I think that their knowledge of the process and their opinions could be valuable. And I'd like to just kind of throw it out there as a for something for all of us to think about, that
Yes.
even though this most definitely will heavily impact the Whitaker, it will impact all of Eugene. I've had friends that were raised on the foothills of 22nd and Arthur, or up on the foothill of Washington and 20th. The sound of the train cascades across our valley and blasts those foothill neighbors just as they blast us, just a few decibels less. So
Correct. Yes.
this
So true.
issue, beyond them coming to talk to the Whitaker Community Council, I think the Whitaker Community Council pushing for them to come and talk to the city would also be pertinent. I think that the city of Eugene should have a town hall with the city manager, with the city council. This is a big deal, and I think that it's time for the city to also show their face, because they know about it, and as much as I've inquired, none of them are admitting it. So
Exactly. Well said. Thank you so much. Yeah, and for your info, I reached out to our neighborhood association person, which is Cindy Kohler, and I got all of the emails from the surrounding neighborhood associations. So I'm going to go ahead and add Katie Maritz and the citizen panel to that list of invitees, because this has been the benefit of them, or us, playing the conflict, the meeting date confusion is that the more time we have to really gather more and more people, the better for all of us. So thank you, Travis. Great idea. Janet had her hand raised. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think you're muted, Janet.
So I have contacted other parties since the kind of screw up on the meeting date with Coos Bay Line, and I've talked with both the Federal Railroad Administration, local rail inspector, and here's the politics behind it. UP, Union Pacific, is not inclined to surrender their autonomy they currently have with the existing crossing gates, the way they're structured. They know how they operate, they know how they work, and Union Pacific is not inclined to surrender their autonomy, largely in part, and Genevieve tried to imply, I don't know if she meant it that way, that I was advocating that we undertake cleaning up the rail yards. The reason why I brought that up, in the conversation I had with the Federal Railroad Administration, the rail inspector, is that Union Pacific has not been impressed to the point of wanting to do business with the city, largely due to their policy with the campers spread out all over on their tracks. Another reason Union Pacific is not inclined to agree to the quiet zone is partly that, and also the maintenance becomes the liability, the responsibility of Union Pacific. It's fine and well that the city has the funding for the gates, but there's hurdles that are not being made known, I think, through it's not being publicized well enough. The city does have a lousy policy in that they're allowing folks on the tracks being open to the blue tarps, the campers spread out all over, especially on this side of town. Union Pacific is not inclined to want to do any kind of business with the city. And I got that straight from the Federal Railroad inspector and also from Union Pacific, their senior executive director of PR. I spoke with him as well. And they each confirmed the same view of Eugene, that until they show some efforts in addressing these issues that are impacting the citizens in Whitaker and the surrounding neighborhood associations, the rail industry, Union Pacific, is not inclined or interested in wanting to deal, if at all, on the quiet zone. So just to head you up, I'm not advocating, Genevieve, to go clean up the rail yards. The trash is a huge problem and it's policy driven. It's not enough attention is being, the millions of dollars we have invested in dealing with the unhoused has, I see
That wasn't
very
what my
little.
interpretation is.
I-
So don't
I
don't
see.
you don't have to
Oh,
spend a lot of effort correcting it, because that's not
yeah,
what.
I see little effort on the city and restoring it. In fact, we've got more businesses moving out from our communities than coming in, and ever more of the campers that are not really contributing to our societal needs or conforming to it. I rest my case.
Thank you, Janet. That was really interesting information. That's kind of scary. Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, there are a number of different railroad entities around here. The Union Pacific is not the only railroad involved here. We've got the Coos Bay Rail Line Company that goes from Eugene to Coos Bay, and then the marshalling yards here in Oregon. Union Pacific is a Class 1 rail line. They're talking about leasing the marshalling yards to the Central Oregon and Pacific Railroad Corp, C-O-R-P. That's a Class 3, subject to way less reporting requirements than the Class 1. It's the remnants of Henry Villard's railroad company from the 19th century that still runs tracks over the Siskiyous, south from Ashland, over the top, instead of like all the rest of the freight going around the Siskiyous. So you've got 3 different railroad companies potentially involved here. And that will be something that I hope Janet can navigate through for us. And rather than speaking about railroads as some kind of monolithic entity, being aware that there are different levels of, different class levels of the different railroads and subject to different rules and regulations. So we probably need to end up being experts on that too.
Right. In your opinion, this massive intermodal port project, would you assume that all 3 of those railroads would be using this? Is that?
I would think that Union Pacific would be better people to be running the marshalling yards, because if some of this freight is going to go north and some of this freight's going to go south, it's going to lead to that problem that we were talking about of the trains coming in off the Coos Bay line, blocking all the crossings through Eugene, then backing up to the marshalling yard where they can split off stuff that needs to go north and stuff that needs to go south, and then heading out from there. Unless, of course, the trains that they assemble in Coos Bay are only going south, in which case it would be a different question. So I think having Central Oregon and Pacific Railroad Corp, the Class 3, responsible for the complexity of what we have possibly ahead of us is probably not advisable. I think we're going to need some pretty pretty knowledgeable or solid railroad companies involved in this project. What I see about Corp and the Coos Bay Rail Line people, it doesn't appear that they have the caliber that Union Pacific has. So it's a bit of a minefield here, and I don't know the lay of the land. All I've got is from Googling and reading news reports and stuff about what the railroads are doing and some familiarity with the history. But Janet would be a good specialist on this for us.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead, Janet. You've got your hand up, and then Travis.
Yeah, I wanted to add that this is going to be a delicate dance, and Stephen's correct. Union Pacific is undertaking pulling the permits because they are far more knowledgeable and they have the breadth of experience. The other rail lines that are coming in, as you pointed out, one of them had gone through a couple of stop and go on its business. Yeah. So they've had some problems in their history. I think they're trying to gain up and they see this port as a good opportunity. But there's going to be, to understand what the stakeholders are involved, you have the Federal Railroad Administration that kind of oversees, at best, as a community, we have the opportunity to mitigate some of the issues that will be coming into our community. We're not going to be able to stop it, very doubtful, so we can put that aside. But understanding what each of these people, agencies, how they parlay and work within this this event that's coming to Eugene. So Federal Railroad Administration is a good source for understanding the protocols of when a rail industry wants to come in and do some different things, do I say? So in my talk with the Union Pacific, I requested that it become a town hall meeting because it will definitely impact Eugene. And Eugene council members and the mayor need to get their act together. They're destroying good opportunity to have a good working relationship and bringing some vitality to our local economy and making it a win-win and not feel like. So the city needs to really bustle down and make our city a much more attractive and doable point in attracting, being able to work and present ourselves as, for lack of a better word, professionals.
Thank you, Janet. Jen just put in the chat, she's got the UP training manual if anyone wants to dig into the process. That's awesome. That might be helpful for us. Go ahead, Travis.
Can I request that everybody that's not talking mute so that there's not feedback?
Yeah, I'll mute.
Thank you. That'll stop the feedback. Okay, go ahead, Travis.
Okay, a couple of things as to what Stephen had put forth. I think that there's some truth to the mix of players on the railroad tracks. However, as I understand, I could be wrong, but I believe the way it is that Union Pacific owns the tracks. I think that the Coos line owns some little side tracks there, kind of where Blair Boulevard ends and goes into the industrial district. But the main tracks, I believe they're owned by Union Pacific. I think Union Pacific, I don't know how it works, if it's a lease or some sort of lease to each of the different entities that use that track, whether it's Amtrak or Coos or Central Oregon. But I think that Union Pacific is the owner of most of the track, especially the track that goes through each one of our crossings through the neighborhood. A side note that, and if I'm mistaken and somebody knows knows whether I'm mistaken, please let me know. But that's how I believe it to be. One concerning thing I had was I was looking through their the intermodal projects pamphlet that you guys provided us, and I was looking at the different what they call stakeholders, community stakeholders. It's a vast list, and when you get to the C section, the section where the word city starts popping up, there's the city of Veneta, there's the city of Reedsport, there's the city of every single town that's impacted, except for the city of Eugene.
Yep.
And if you look a little deeper on that list, further down under E, you'll find Eugene City Council as one of the stakeholders. That throws huge red flags up for me. Number one, for transparency, or for I don't know what it is, but I believe that without the name City of Eugene as one of the stakeholders, I believe that that might be taking Sarah Maderi, the person that's running the corporation of the City of Eugene, off the hook in some way. I think that there has been a purposeful lack of transparency by the City of Eugene. And I think that it's very suspicious that the City of Eugene, out of all the cities impacted by this, is not listed as one of the stakeholders. I would implore, once again, the WCC. I'm happy to make noise myself, but I think that it's stronger coming from one of the only neighborhood councils that's listed. I don't believe I saw Train Song. I'll double check, but the Chamber of Commerce is listed, and there's a couple of other local entities that are listed, but the City of Eugene is missing. So I want the City of Eugene to be on that manual, on that stakeholder manual. I think that the City of Eugene, who is Sarah Maderi, because the community or the city council is the city council. I think that she should be on that also. The City of Eugene should be on that, because what's coming down the pike is going to be something that we need the City of Eugene and the city council to be our voice, because like Janet said, and like others are well aware, the railroad does what it wants. The railroad, they're the cowboys. They get to do what they want on their terms. And we can't just let the city throw up their hands and say, well, they're going to do what they want to do. It's like, well, they will, especially if we don't give them any pushback. And if our own city isn't saying, hey, we got this idea to kind of quiet it down in this neighborhood. And what's about to happen is not going to quiet it down.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm rambling about that. But one other quick thing about the intermodal project is there is construction going on the Chambers overpass. And Janet actually talked to some of the workers there. They claim they're raising the bridge a couple of inches. They're claiming that it's due to seismic repairs, but I got to wonder if it's because there's going to be very large double stacked containers going under there, and maybe they need a little bit more room.
Yeah, that's really interesting, you guys, because that is exactly what in the initial information that I received that started this whole thing was that they were saying that all bridges and connections from here to Coos Bay would have to be significantly raised. So it's a very good guess that they're starting already. Keep in mind that the last communication I got from the JTL group, the public relations group, was that this project was set to kick off this spring. So, yeah, that could be happening. But folks, I just want to point out one thing. It's this is a huge project, and I wonder if we should be. Well, one thing that would help me immensely to kind of keep track of this is I know Janet and Travis are really taking the lead in terms of communicating with these outside folks to try to gather more information. It would be helpful to WCC and I if we were kind of in the loop with that and could keep track of progress, right? Because looking at this thing as, a project manager, we need to just start getting things in lists. Who's done what else has to be done, and so I would say that we kind of galvanize in a more organized way, because we're going to need to be ready at this meeting, and we're going to need to keep it on topic and really get the answers that we need, rather than be kind of, how politicians tend to talk. It's a lot of flutter, and we don't want to let them do that. So anybody have any constructive ideas besides, maybe send me the stuff, and for everyone to know, everything I do on this is volunteer work. I manage the nonprofit side of WCC, and unless we have grants or infrastructure related to a project, this is all volunteer time for me, because this is a real intense neighborhood crisis. So I'm super willing to help in organization, if we can get some spreadsheets going, but let's galvanize now and figure out how we can really target this. Go ahead, Janet.
In speaking with the worker, oh, am I unmuted?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. In speaking with the worker that night, and he's a local worker here. He told me that this was a federal grant to do seismic retrofitting. And along with it, I asked him if the berms on each side had been tunneled. The word was that the unhoused were tunneling through that dirt. They do camp there. And he said, I wouldn't use the word tunnel, but they have burrowed into the ground, and some of that grant money would be used to correct that. Now, it's seemingly a small thing, but this is precisely why the city does not have this under control or a better hand on it. Why these allowing this kind of activity to go on, and then you bring in a major undertaking with the rail industry, it kind of diffuses the credibility of the city with the businesses trying to come into the city. And that I just brought that up just to exemplify some of the issues that they have to go through because of poor policy that's not really being addressed by the city. So I feel that has to be spoken to and addressed with full promises by this city that they'll endeavor to clean up this matter that's impacting not only parks, but also industry and business coming to Eugene, and making us a credible, the city needs to be more credible when they come to the table with how earnest they want to attract business into our community. It's an ongoing problem. And I see it as possibly one that will shoot down the quiet zone potentially altogether.
Thank you,
That's all.
Jen. Thank you. And yeah, Jen, awesome. She's got some stuff over here suggesting a spreadsheet, who the contacts are, who's contacting them. We need to list the concerns, whether they're noise, traffic, access to hospitals. Stephen's suggesting Slack. We could set up channels for each of the topics. Yeah, okay. So let's see. Stephen, are you good at Slack? Do you want to take the lead and get the ball rolling, or do you want me to?
No, I'm a Slack user, but not a Slack
Builder.
admin.
Okay,
Builder
yeah.
admin,
I suck at Slack. I have to admit that. Like, we have it for
Yeah,
the market, and I can't find messages in it ever.
I'm not fond of it either. And actually for succession and just the way we do things at WCC, it's probably better if we start in the Google Drive, because that's our formatting. And so why don't I can work on this a little bit tomorrow. I think I'll just take some of these ideas. Do people Travis and Janet, are you familiar with working in the Drive or like buildings or adding to spreadsheets, I guess?
Not,
seems like-
not I.
Okay. Okay, then maybe a good start would be this. If Janet and Travis could just send me anything that you want, that that you've got, that we could build this spreadsheet with, I'll get it going, and then we all have use of it. So I think that might be great. And then what Jen said in there too is we want to list the concerns once and then ensure that they're addressed. So we can kind of build a timeline in it, and that way we can get our ducks in a row before we have this meeting. So I'll work on that a little bit tomorrow and get a basic lineup for it. But can you, Travis, will you send me like any information you have, or because what you talked about was great before, that no one seemed to know except for Randy Groves. If you could get that for me written out somehow, and then we'll build that into it. Does that sound good?
Yeah, either just maybe forward you my email, or forward you the pertinent information that I got from the email.
Yes.
Hey, Marwitz.
Yeah,
when I first contacted her this winter, she literally said something to the effect of, I don't know anything about that, but I'll dig in and ask. I think she said, I'll ask ODOT or ask our partners about it. And then when I pressed her for a second email, which took, I think, almost 2 months later, and I included Lindsay Leach in that email, kind of to apply some urgency for a response. She responded and then said that she had heard about it, but doesn't know much about it. And the main concern that I have is that the person that's supposed to be in charge of the quiet zone would be so lackadaisical with that information, as if it's not of serious concern. I think that the city is saying that they're still just waiting on Union Pacific, but like Janet said, I kind of actually think Union Pacific isn't going to, that it's just not going to happen. And so I think it's time for the city to, or get off the pot. But that's my point of view, and I'll send you whatever I got.
That's great. Thank you. That way we can, we'll get a list of people for sure that we want to invite to this. And I was thinking I would get a draft letter of invitation, and I'll run it by everybody here just for input. But that was kind of my next goal. Once the executive director from the port project and Margaret can absolutely lock down the date that they'll be attending, then that was my goal, to start promoting and get everybody from the neighborhoods invited, the city, and with special emphasis on Katie Mawitz. You put it in the chat for me. I'm saying it wrong.
It's
Marwitz.
Yep,
Got it. Right. Okay. Perfect. Yeah, it's alarming how few people know about this at this stage. Go ahead, Janet.
If the way I look at this, and Stephen may know this too, or step in, Stephen, on this. If you look at this as a four-legged stool, and you have the community, you have your local city governance, and you have the railroad companies, and you have the Federal Railroad Administration. Of the four legs, the two that could be the most helpful to one another, in my opinion, would be the Federal Railroad Administration. They, as I understand it, and we are in Region 8 under the Federal Railroad Administration. Pacific Northwest is considered Region 8. And they have the sources, the ability to put our community, our city governance, in touch with vendors that do this kind of preparedness. If you understand, they kind of step in it can be fraught with complications beyond, and I would dare say that anyone at the city, I want question whether they have the scope or the depth of knowledge and or experience in dealing with this and bringing about a quiet zone with the influx of the terminal. We've got multiple pieces moving in here. So I would like to see, I think it would be wiser to fundamentally get in touch with federal FRA and ask them how you go about setting up for a vendor. And there are funds through the rail industry that helps mitigate the parties that are dealing with events like this. So, and some of them specifically deal with the quiet zone. And I think we're going to need a lot of scaffolding to bridge what the city has done with their relationship with the rail industry here locally. So of the four legs, I see the community and FRA as being closest to being able to gain the knowledge and the understanding so necessary in moving forward with this.
Thank you, Janet. Those are great ideas. All right. Let's see. Go ahead, Stephen.
Any of you who have been dealing with Melissa get the impression that she may be stalling or trying to backpedal on any commitments made to us? She may be doing more research and recognize that we may be a hornet's nest that she could potentially be kicking by coming and doing a public meeting with us. Have we been identified as a particularly troublesome entity? So just wondering whether there's any kind of backing off on her part. Reading the emails, I'm wondering about these scheduling conflicts, whether she's just looking for a way to back away from the hornet's nest.
I don't get that feeling. I think, unfortunately, it was too many chefs in the kitchen with trying to initially communicate with her. Janet had invited her for more of a community in person, and then I tried to ensure that she would come by just saying, okay, we're happy with online. And then Margaret got involved, and, so I think I'm not getting that feeling that she thinks we are of any hassle. But I am sure that she is getting a lot of pushback and hassle from many, many communities. It can't just be us. What is just truly alarming is that the communities aren't galvanized and doing it connected. And that's what we will garner by really promoting this meeting and letting all of our neighborhood associations around us know. So go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, I'm kind of under the belief that if there's anybody that's worried about kicking a hornet's nest, it's the city of Eugene. I think that the city of Eugene at this point, I'm willing to say they've willfully withheld public engagement on this topic. This is a huge deal. What's being planned is a huge deal that will actually create a huge impact. And I don't think there's a better thing to go public about and to start talking about at the council level. Lindsay Leach now knows about it because I told her, and she was part of the conversation with Katie Marwitz, who at first knew nothing, and then all of a sudden kind of knew something. And I had to hear, third hand that Randy Groves was in communication with the Chamber of Commerce. So this deal is definitely known by people that need to know about it in the city. Why the city has not come directly to the WCC to say, hey, we need to start a public engagement campaign with you because you're the impacted community more so than downtown is beyond me, except for to think that it might be the city of Eugene that doesn't want to kick a hornet's nest.
Mhm.
And on top of that, the lack of transparency with the quiet zone. The last update, last I checked on the website, was August of last year, claiming that things could be actually starting late fall, early spring. And that was when I was contacting Katie Marwitz, was late fall, early spring, and saying, I'd like an update. And she simply couldn't give me one. And when she finally did, after being pressed, it was kind of this, we're still stuck in negotiations with Union Pacific. According to what Janet has researched and found out directly from Union Pacific isn't playing. They're just not playing. So it's time for the city to say, well, Union Pacific's not playing. However, there's this other thing that's coming called intermodal, and we should start preparing as a community. So yeah, I'm rambling.
Thank you, Travis.
Bye.
It looks like Jen's got a point here on your comment. Go ahead, Jen.
Yeah, I just actually wanted to point folks to those materials that you sent out because they're great. And so if there's a timeline, it's the third attachment. They're not going to start construction until 2027 for the actual bay. And so they have another report, which is the second attachment, and they did some due diligence in a pre-scoping survey and things like that. But I think framing, I think it's a good resource to look at some of those lists of concern that we want to maybe address and kind of like pull out and see if we could align with things that have already been said, because we're going to find allies by looking at the list of careholders that they reached out to for that survey and seeing, you know, which ones are going to be the ones that we're going to be able to bite on the most. So I do recommend that folks before, and I totally fessed up that I did not. I'm just pretty good at scanning documents while on Zoom calls. But I read most of the federal budget yesterday, the proposed bill. So yeah, so like, who knows if the FRA is going to exist, but that's fine. But yeah, I think if we can start by grounding ourselves in the information that is there and, you know, making, using the spreadsheet to organize our thoughts and our actions and to build community and allyship that way, that's going to be the most powerful way to move forward. But I also wanted to second that I do think that they are genuinely engaged in the process, at least to the gathering feedback, whether or not they're actually gonna, you know, pay attention to any of it. But I think that there is a potential to, this is just a feasibility grant that they're working on now, is what I could tell from looking at it and like the planning part. So there is still time. So I just don't want to be too doomsday about that. It's not relevant.
Thank you. It's really good. That's really good. Yeah, I think we're all like kind of elevated and anxious, but you're right. There is a lot of time here, and we can do a lot of good work by working together as community. Thank you, Jen. Okay, go ahead, Janet, and then I think we'll wrap up. I think maybe we'll get a half hour of our night back. So go ahead, Janet.
I raised my hand, like Jen pointed out, there is a timeline, and there's a timeline for the rail industry. There's a timeline for the community. So we have two timelines we're dealing with, and I can't think of a better way to begin to organize and get this together than doing an understudy. What exactly? And there are companies that do this professionally for communities. And I think that would be the wisest approach, because this, unless you're a person that can go deep and wide into the woods and stay with it and know 70 different things all at once, this I foresee is going to be a very fraught with complications. And I would bet that that's why, in part, a lot of the reason why city officials are holding back, because they're not grasping the complexities involved in this. And it will be wiser, I think, for the city to get in touch and have someone undertake a understudy of the community concerns, so that while we have the opportunity to include the mitigation in the plan that they're putting together, as Genevieve pointed out, that we have that opportunity and it's not lost. Over.
Thank you, Janet. Really good feedback and thoughts. Okay, we had a kitty sighting. I'm sad you moved it, Derek. Darn it. All right, folks. Well, what do you think? Should we get our half hour back? Or I feel like I've got some good action items. We'll get some emails together and get a little spreadsheet going that's got contacts. Any other action items before we sign off? Go ahead, Travis.
Sorry, I had forgotten to mention during the update, during the safety and health update, there is an area of concern, and that is Railroad Boulevard. And I've mentioned it a couple times, and I've actually reached out to the mission myself. There's an area of Railroad Boulevard from Mako all the way to Jerry and Waltz, and oftentimes up Van Buren, all the way up Van Buren to to Red Barn. That seems to be like, we can call it the trail of trash. And I don't know about you guys, but it doesn't matter how big or small it is. When it's that consistent, it's disgusting. There is, we could call it micro trash. There are also larger pieces of trash. But as you're driving down Railroad from Chambers down towards First and Van Buren, it is one piece of trash after another, the entirety of the north and the south, even more so on the south railroad side. I don't know whose jurisdiction that is, if it's technically railroad all the way to the curb, or if that is Public Works purview. But I have made reports to Public Works. That is one area that they have not taken care of. And so I implore the council, whoever's talking to the mission, that on some sunny day they can get together a group of volunteers and sweep that whole road. It just looks like heck, and it's kind of the entrance into our neighborhood. It's like the welcome to the Whitaker, and plenty of Whitaker residents use that trip, and plenty of people use our neighborhood as a pass through, and it just is trashed. That's it. That's one more item of community health and safety. There's garbage all over the Railroad Boulevard.
Thank you. Definitely noted. And it looks like Janet's got some final words.
Just the last one, specifically what Travis was addressing, the Railroad Boulevard along there. I had asked many years for the city arborist, and it's hard to define who has the jurisdiction of that greenway between the rail line. I undertook trying to find that out, and everyone says, it's not mine, it's not mine. But the reason I raised my hand is I would like to see a hedgerow or a laurel bush or something that blocks the pedestrian traffic that seems to be coming over and dumping trash all across there in the two urban forests, the berms. There should not be campers up there trashing up that berm and compromising that structural integrity that berm offers. There should be no one on that wide open space. So I would like to see a nice tall hedgerow planted all along there, and it would buffer the sound of the tracks and hopefully clamp down on the pedestrian traffic that's going across there. That's all.
Thank you, Janet. I'm always on the lookout for environmental justice or climate mitigation grants, and that sounds like a really good idea. We've partnered in the past with Friends with Trees, and yeah, I that's always on my thought process is how we get more greenery, how we get more trees. We think of the Whitaker as being such an intensely treed and lovely area, but it actually proves a deficit when you look at the canopy. What is it called? The canopy report, tree canopy report. So thank you for that suggestion. And yeah, just know that I'm always working on that in the back of my mind. So, all right, folks, not to cut us short, but I think we've got a plan. Jen, I think she's waving by. Okay. Thank you, Jen. All right. So yeah, let's just be prepared tomorrow. We've got our general meeting. And so all of you had some, incredible stuff. We'll be having this conversation about the port tomorrow as well. So let's please bring your good ideas and observations to that. And without further ado, shall we sign off? Sounds
You bet.
great. All right. Hope to see you all tomorrow at the general meeting. Thank you. Good night.
I emailed you.
Oh,
I emailed you something about getting together sometime soon and having lunch.
sure.
Did I just lose you?
Sorry,
Thought-
Derek.
Thought I
Sorry.
lost you. She doesn't want to have lunch with me. Click.
No. Sorry about that. Let me just stop the recording here and there we go. Okay.
No problem.